been 5 months now since I finished my very first game, Danville. By finish, I mean I completed all the system I initially planned for. I still wanted to keep adding more, but the more I work on the game, the more I started noticing a big problem. The systems I worked so hard to implement is not scalable. Most of the time whenever I wanted to add something new, I had to rewrite some of the old system just to make it work. On top of that, the game wasn't optimized at all. Or maybe my computer just couldn't handle this kind of game, because every time I click play, my computer starts screaming, probably yelling at me complaining about my life choices. And this was with barely any moving objects in the scene. What more if I added a village simulation to the game? I wanted to make a game where the player builds a village, and the villager helps the player to upgrade their gear and become stronger. But I don't want the items to just appear out of thin air. I wanted the items to be processed by the players or the villager with the current materials they have. And I also wanted the game to run on mobile just like my last game, Jankan Arena, which I published on Google Play Store. The problem was my computer hated running the game already. If I added a village simulation on top of it, my computer might quit on me, and it is basically holding my game development freedom hostage. So I have to admit defeat. Continuing this game the way it is just wasn't going to work. So I give up, or rather I postpone the development of this game. I might work on it on the future, but it's gonna take a while. So I abandoned all my progress on my first game and decided to start over with a new one. This time I will be making the game into a 3D top-down view. Because the camera is far away, models don't need a lot of details. I can even ignore the back of the models if I needed more performance. And unlike my first game where I just added system without thinking, this time I will carefully consider performance every time I add a new feature. Adjusting my script for performance also improves the way I create my scripts. Also, this time I wanted the system to be expandable. I am also going to be designing the controls to run on mobile. So that is why I've been making this Danville mini game for more than a month now. It's a 3D top-down survival with village simulation and dungeon crawling in it. The idea is player creates their own village, gather resources in the dungeon, then villagers help process the collected resources into tools or weapons. Players and villagers can then use those tools and weapons to gather more resources. I wanted people to actually play this game, so I wanted to get a second opinion on the idea, but I can't ask the people I know about the game because I am shy and my YouTube channel is kind of a secret. You guys don't know who I am, so I think it's okay to ask you guys. And I did ask some people I know, not for this game but for Jankan Arena, because I'm looking for a game tester at that time. It's a requirement to upload the game on Google Play. It's funny because they think I'm scamming them. It kind of looked like a scam since they have to click a link and subscribe to become a tester. But in YouTube you can just watch the video and comment your thoughts on the game. So there's no link or anything that looks like a scam. But for someone who is interested to be a tester, please let me know cause I might need it soon. I can pay you though. I also have a Discord. I will add the link to the description, which makes it suspicious now because it's a link. You just have to believe me that it's not a scam. And here is how I created the game. Of course, just like every other project, the first thing I make is the player movement. This is my first time making a 3D top-down controller, but I have already made a third-person controller before, so this should be easy. After running into some issues, I finally managed to get the bean moving. I modeled a familiar looking character in Blender, made an idle and run animation, and used it as both the player and villager model. Everyone, this is Steven. Steven is obsessed with target game objects. If you give him a target game object, he will run toward it and idle. Remove the game object and he starts to panic. The target game object is the only thing keeping him calm. And now we have a villager. For performance optimization, rather than giving each villager their own AI and update, all villagers are managed through a single script. I tested performance by spawning a lot of villagers. No complaints so far. With my computer's approval, I added the first villager job. He is another Steven but he got a thing for trees. The moment he sniffs a tree around, he will stand inside it and wait till it disappears. That tree is then reserved so only one villager can work on it, preventing the villagers from ganging up on the same tree. After cutting all the trees, they lost the meaning of life and started panicking again. And here are Stevens panicking at different speeds. Now that I have a villager working and my computer is not overreacting, it was time to add something that will help the survival of the village. A village can't survive on a panicking Steven alone. Villagers need to eat, so I need to add a food source. So the next step is adding farming to the game. I don't need a complicated farming system for now. So first I made a plot system which inside holds the crop system. Then I created a building system that lets the player place the plots. I created 3 types of plot: carrot, potato, and wheat plot. And I can always add a different crops without changing the whole system. Unless of course the crop has a different behavior. The player can place the plots by going to build mode and dragging the needed plot on the location. After that, I gave Steven a new job, a farmer. This Steven has a thing for plots and crops. If the plot is not tilled, they tilled it. If a plot is empty, they plant seeds in it. If the crops are fully grown, they harvest them. And of course, I tried to make sure that only one villager can interact with a plot. So there's no fighting for land in Danville. Crops needed to be updated all the time. So just like my villager manager, I created one script that updates all the crops instead. Now the village can actually sustain itself. Players can place farm plots wherever they want. Farmers can then plant crops and harvest them when they are ready. And most importantly, I can spawn a lot of farmers and plots without my computer filing a complaint. The village has finally got something going on. With the farmer and the lumberjack working, the village is finally producing items. But the village doesn't have a storage to put the items on. So I needed to create an inventory system. The problem is that inventory system can get complicated really fast. And based on experience, messing this up is gonna suck. I kept it simple but I prepare it for the things I might need it in the future. I added storage that can be placed on the ground. The player and the villager can use it. The inventory can also be attached to the villager or the player. Items can be dragged and placed into a specific storage slot. No stock splitting yet, but I can add it later on. I just wanted to see how I can make the villager interact with the storage. With that, the village now has a place to store their resources. When the villagers have a full inventory or they don't have anything to do, they will automatically place their gathered resource on their specific storage. The village feels more organized. Players can get items or give villagers items through storage. And everything still runs smoothly. It's not a perfect inventory system but exactly what the game needs right now. With villagers working and storing resources, they were basically functioning member of the society. But working means they get tired and they needed a place to rest. So I added beds. Beds are the home for villagers and players. I will change it to an actual house in the future. Then I added stamina to the game. When stamina drops below a certain threshold, sleep becomes the villagers' top priority. They stop whatever they are doing, go to bed and sleep. Once they are rested, they continue what they are doing before. The system works great, except when the player sleeps on the bed. Villagers can now sleep. However, how are they going to eat? Crops need to be cooked before villagers and players can eat them. So I wanted a proper cooking system for the village. So to start, I added the campfire as the early cooking station. Wood will be the fuel source. If there's no wood, the campfire shuts off and the cooking pauses until fuel is added. Then I added a new cook profession. Now the village has edible food. At first I wanted the cook to place the food in a storage. Hungry villagers then get those food to eat. But I decided to change it and add a seat instead. Whenever the player or the villager is hungry, they just sit near the campfire. Then the cook will prepare food for them. It's a first come first serve basis. Now villagers have a connection to each other. But there's still something missing. To plant crops you need seeds. And I don't want villagers magically getting seeds out of nowhere. That is where the dungeon comes in. Players will need to enter the dungeon to get raw materials including seeds. But how can a player enter a dungeon? So I created this model and I wanted it to be like a floating crystal, but it looks kind of sus. But I'm still going to be using it. It's gonna be the plug that connects the overworld to the dungeon. When the player interacts with this thing, they get teleported to the dungeon. It looks the same as the overworld, but if you walk a little bit further, you will see goblins spawning in there. I also made this goblin model and it looks more terrifying up close. As of now, goblins drop seeds and crops when defeated. And the drop automatically get added to the player's inventory. Now players can get seeds by raiding a dungeon. Now that the dungeon is needed to collect seeds for the village, and dungeons have enemies to fight, it makes sense that I also added weapons and tools to the game. And I wanted it to be craftable, which means I needed to create a crafting system next. Just like the cooking station, crafting recipe should be easy to add. So I created a crafting table, then set up a user interface for crafting. And here is how it works. Players interact with the crafting table, then pick and click the items they wanted to craft. If the player has the required recipe, the required items will show on the 4 slots above, then the output item will appear on the right side. The player can then click the output item and the item will automatically be placed on their inventory. I use a scriptable object for the recipe, so adding new craftable items is easy. Now that there's tools and weapons, player and villager should be able to equip them. So now I have to make an equipment system, meaning I should also add new animation for using the weapons and tools. So I also need to sync the animation to the damage or interaction of the tools and weapon. For some reason, syncing the animation always takes me a lot of time to set up, and I am kind of afraid to use the animation events. So instead I am using a timer on my script. But this is so hard to do and it still doesn't match the animation. So for this one, I am giving the animation event a try. And that's what I did. And I created the equipment system. I made it so when the player or the villager interact with an object, the tools they needed will automatically get equipped. So the villagers now use tools when interacting with object. The interaction is synced to the animation, and I realized that using animation event in my earlier projects would have made things much easier as they are simple to set up and easy to understand. Having the equipment system, I thought I had already made all the system I needed, but I realized that the building system isn't set up properly yet. It lets the player build without having the construction materials. I wanted the players to be able to place the buildings, but players needed to gather and deposit all the construction material first before they can use the buildings. So I created the construction objects. When the player places a building using the building system, this object is the one that's gonna be placed. It only keeps track of the construction materials needed to build the desired building. If the player interacts with this object and has the materials on their inventory, it gets deposited to the construction object until it's complete, which then places the actual prefab that the player needs. With this system, players need to collect resources first before they can use the building, and it gives the game some kind of progression. With that done, I'm gonna be ending it here. In the next video, I will be focusing on adding more items, tools, and weapons, or maybe add more enemies, we will see. I don't always record and sometimes forget to, so there are a lot of gaps in the video, and some pictures I added that I didn't mention. Hopefully I get better at making contents and videos. Before I started making games and YouTube, I can't even speak on the microphone. This is my own voice, so I think I get better. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.